in a base isolation building, so it should not move. But still, I couldn't even stand up. That was the biggest and longest earthquake I've ever experienced.
We're now approaching 2:46 p.m., the exact time the earthquake struck. People across Japan are about to observe a moment of silence.
Reflecting uncertainty about the impact of a disaster, one seismic expert says happens only once every 1,000 years.
Japan 2011, the worst tsunami in Japan's history. On March 11, 2011, Japan experienced one of the most catastrophic natural disasters in its history, a tsunami triggered by a massive undersea earthquake. The devastation spanned across cities, towns, and villages, leaving destruction, grief, and a long path to recovery in its wake. This is the story of the 2011 Tōhoku tsunami, the lives it forever altered, and the resilience of a nation determined to rise again. The scale of the disaster shocked the world, drawing attention to the vulnerabilities of coastal communities and the importance of disaster preparedness. In this comprehensive account, we delve into the science, the events leading up to the disaster, and the aftermath of this unparalleled tragedy, exploring how a nation endured and adapted. At 2:46 p.m. Japan Standard Time, a magnitude 9.1 undersea megathrust earthquake struck off the northeastern coast of Honshu, Japan's main island. The epicenter was located approximately 70 kilometers or 43 miles east of the Oshika Peninsula in Miyagi Prefecture. This quake, now known as the Great East Japan Earthquake, was one of the most powerful ever recorded, and its energy was equivalent to roughly 600 million Hiroshima atomic bombs. The tremors were felt as far away as Tokyo, over 230 miles from the epicenter, where skyscrapers swayed for minutes. The earthquake caused the seabed to rise by several meters, displacing enormous volumes of water. This movement triggered a series of tsunamis that would soon reach the coastlines. The shaking lasted for 6 minutes, causing widespread damage even before the tsunami arrived. Buildings crumbled, roads were torn apart, and fires broke out as gas lines ruptured across affected areas. Train services and airports were immediately suspended, stranding thousands of people. Geologists later determined that the earthquake shifted Japan's main island eastward by about 2.4 meters or 8 feet, and even altered Earth's axis slightly, shortening the length of a day by microseconds. The unprecedented scale of this seismic event set the stage for the catastrophic tsunami that followed. Just minutes after the earthquake, tsunami warnings were issued across Tōhoku region. The first wave struck within 30 minutes, giving some residents barely enough time to evacuate. The tsunami wave reached heights of up to 40 meters or 131 feet in certain areas, completely engulfing coastal towns and cities. Some reports indicated that the waves traveled at speeds of up to 800 kilometers per hour or 500 miles per hour while in deep water, slowing down but gaining height as they approached the coast. The city of Rikuzen Takata in Iwate Prefecture was one of the hardest hit. Nearly the entire city was submerged, with 80% of its buildings destroyed. The iconic Takata pine tree, a symbol of resilience for the city, was the only tree left standing among a grove of 70,000. In Minamisenriku, Miyagi Prefecture, the water surged over protective seawalls and reached as far as 5 kilometers or 3 miles inland. Survivors clung to rooftops and telephone poles, waiting for rescue as the waves tore through their homes. In Sendai, one of the largest cities in the region, the tsunami swept through residential areas, schools, and agricultural fields, leaving behind a landscape of devastation. Thousands of lives were lost in a matter of minutes as the unrelenting waves swallowed everything in their path. Footage of the waves carrying cars, boats, and debris into the city shocked the world, underscoring the scale of the disaster. The tsunami also inundated several coastal nuclear power plants, compounding the crisis. The tsunami's destruction extended beyond homes and infrastructure. It triggered a nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The tsunami waves overwhelmed the plant's seawalls, flooding its backup generators and cutting off power to its cooling systems. Without cooling, 3 of the plant's reactors overheated, leading to hydrogen explosions and the release of radioactive materials into the environment. Plumes of radioactive steam rose into the sky, forcing evacuations and raising fears of long-term contamination. Evacuations were ordered within a 20-kilometer or 12-mile radius of the plant, displacing more than 150,000 residents. Many of these evacuees faced uncertainty, as some areas were declared uninhabitable due to radiation levels. Farmers were forced to abandon livestock, and fishermen in the region lost their livelihoods as fears of contaminated seafood spread. The Fukushima disaster became the world's worst nuclear crisis since the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. It raised global concerns about nuclear safety and prompted Japan to reconsider its reliance on nuclear energy. The Japanese government faced criticism for its handling of the crisis, particularly for delays in sharing information about radiation risks. Cleanup efforts at the plant continue to this day, with decommissioning expected to take decades. The human cost of the 2011 tsunami was staggering. Over 15,000 people lost their lives and more than 2,500 remain missing to this day. Entire families were wiped out, and survivors were left grappling with the trauma of losing loved ones, homes, and livelihoods. The disaster affected 18 prefectures, displacing over 450,000 people at its peak. Temporary shelters were set up to accommodate the displaced, but conditions were far from ideal. Many survivors lived in cramped conditions for months, facing shortages of food, water, and medical supplies. Elderly residents in particular struggled to adapt to the harsh living conditions, with some succumbing to illnesses exacerbated by stress and inadequate care. Psychological trauma added to the hardships, with many experiencing severe anxiety, depression, and survivor's guilt. Stories of parents searching for their children and children orphaned by the disaster were heartbreakingly common. In addition to the immediate loss of life, the disaster left lasting scars on Japan's demographic landscape. Entire towns were abandoned as people moved to safer areas, and many elderly residents who made up a significant portion of the affected population could not relocate. Schools lost students and businesses shuttered permanently, further straining already struggling communities. The financial toll of the disaster was immense, with damages estimated at $235 billion, making it the costliest natural disaster in history. The destruction of infrastructure, homes, and businesses brought economic activity in the Tōhoku region to a standstill. Agricultural land was rendered unusable due to saltwater intrusion, and fisheries, a vital industry for coastal communities, were devastated. Entire fleets of fishing boats were destroyed, leaving thousands of families without income. Supply chain disruptions were felt globally, as Japan is a major exporter of electronic components, automobiles, and machinery. Factories in the affected areas halted production, leading to delays and shortages in various industries worldwide. Major corporations like Toyota and Sony faced significant setbacks, illustrating the interconnectedness of global supply chains. The disaster also revealed vulnerabilities in Japan's energy infrastructure, as power shortages disrupted businesses and daily life. The Japanese government launched a massive reconstruction effort, allocating trillions of yen to rebuild the affected areas. However, progress was slow and faced numerous challenges, including bureaucratic delays, land ownership disputes, and funding shortages. Despite these obstacles, efforts to restore the region continue, with a focus on building more resilient infrastructure. The scale of the disaster prompted an outpouring of international support. Countries around the world sent aid in the form of money, supplies, and personnel. Organizations like the Red Cross and UNICEF mobilized to provide emergency relief, while governments dispatched search and rescue teams and medical professionals to assist Japan in its time of need. The United States sent military personnel and resources as part of Operation Tomodachi, a large-scale humanitarian mission. Social media played a significant role in raising awareness and coordinating aid efforts. Hashtags like #PrayForJapan trended globally, and fundraising campaigns raised millions of dollars. Communities came together to rebuild not just homes, but also a sense of normalcy. Schools reopened, businesses resumed operations, and cultural events were held to foster hope and resilience. Survivors shared their stories through books, documentaries, and art, ensuring that the memory of the disaster would never fade. However, the scars of the disaster remain visible both physically and emotionally. The Fukushima disaster also prompted a shift in Japan's energy policy. The country temporarily shut down all its nuclear reactors and invested heavily in renewable energy sources like solar and wind power. Although some reactors have since been restarted, public trust in nuclear energy remains low. Japan's efforts to diversify its energy portfolio have made it a global leader in renewable energy innovation. The 2011 Tōhoku tsunami was a tragedy of unprecedented scale, leaving a profound impact on Japan and the world. It highlighted the importance of disaster preparedness, the resilience of the human spirit, and the need for international solidarity in times of crisis. The event also underscored the dangers posed by nuclear energy in vulnerable regions, promoting debates and policy changes that continue to this day. As Japan continues to rebuild and learn from this disaster, its story serves as a sobering reminder of nature's power and the enduring strength of a nation determined to rise again. If you found this account informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the incredible story of one of the biggest tsunamis the world has seen.